Conversation with the Candidate continues.
Welcome back to our Conversation with the Candidate, and tonight's guest, Congressman Seth Moulton of Massachusetts. We're going to bring in our live town hall audience now of crack New Hampshire voters with all the best questions, and we're going to start with Kathy Hoey.
Hi, Congressman. Welcome to New Hampshire.
Kathy, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
My question is about, can you tell us your current thoughts on the Mueller investigation and report?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for asking the question. It's on the minds of a lot of Americans. And it's something that we really need to be talking about as a country, because this is really serious stuff. A decorated American veteran, actually a Republican, just like Trump, conducted exhaustive research, thousands of subpoenas, talked to an awful lot of people to determine whether or not the sitting president of the United States committed crimes, potentially crimes for which he should be impeached. But the first unmistakable conclusion of this report is that Russia interfered in our 2016 election. And if, for anybody who's been paying attention, we've done almost nothing to prevent it from happening again. So standing here tonight, as we're having this conversation, we better assume the Russians are watching. They will be interfering in this election in 2020 if they haven't already. This is a national security concern for the United States of America. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you're the staunchest Trump supporter or someone who hates the president's guts, you should be concerned that a foreign power, the greatest adversary that we've ever had, is trying to fundamentally undermine our democracy. So what does this mean we should do? We need to actually step up to Russia. Rather than cozying up to Vladimir Putin like Trump is doing, we need to confront Russia, and that means confronting them by stopping what they're doing on the internet to undermine our elections. Second, we need to have a debate in Congress about whether the president should be impeached. And I called for this a year ago when I voted to move forward with the debate on impeachment. Now, this doesn't mean that I think we should have a vote today. We don't even have all the facts yet because the full Mueller report hasn't even been released. But we need to have that debate because it's clearly evident the president has committed enormous, clear crimes. Now, whether they're impeachable offenses or not, that's for us to determine. But over 30 of his associates, close associates, have been indicted. His campaign chairman is in prison today. So don't tell me there's not enough to talk about when it comes to impeaching the president. So that's why I called for impeachment discussions over a year ago, when frankly the majority of my party was against that. I think it's been a mistake to wait this long, but we have a constitutional responsibility in Congress as a check on the executive to have this debate, and we should be having it today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you, Kathy. Quick follow-up. Do you believe the Attorney General has behaved responsibly in regards to this report?
No, the Attorney General's job is to be the top law enforcement officer in the country, to enforce the laws, not to be a press operative, a spokesman for the president. Not to get out there and give some, cover for what the president has done, but to actually set an example for enforcing the laws that all of us, whether you're sitting here tonight, you're watching at home, whether you're running for president or you are the sitting president, the laws that all of us have to follow.
Next question comes from Carolyn Morrill of Manchester.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. You are in the top 10% for bipartisan voting. Has this created a problem with the Speaker of the House? And if you were president, would she work with you?
Oh, absolutely. We work together. I mean, we've had our differences in the past, and I'm glad that we have had this debate, because we have made some good progress by having this debate. We have term limits now on leadership, so this new generation of leaders can have a voice in our politics. We got the climate change subcommittee, the voting rights subcommittee as a result of that debate. But there's a time to vote for captain, and then there's a time to play on the same team. And that's why I'm proud to work with Speaker Pelosi, and I'd be proud to work with her as the president. But it's important that we have a presidential nominee to take on Trump who's proven that he or she is willing to stand up to the Washington establishment. Because everywhere I go, people are saying we need to change Washington, that Washington as it is isn't getting the job done. But I also want to address what you started the question with, which is just about my bipartisan record. I'm proud of that. There seems to be so much division in our politics that it's almost if, you're a Democrat, you're expected to be so partisan that you never work with Republicans. But you can't get anything done if you're not willing to work across the aisle. So I'm proud of the fact that I've passed several bipartisan bills including the first bill I passed to make it easier for veterans to get care at the VA. And that bill would never have gotten through the Congress, through not only the House, but the Senate as well, and signed into law by the President if I hadn't been able to work with Republicans to get it done. When I ran for Congress in 2014, I had a lot of conversations like this with voters like you. But I think the single most memorable was with a United States Navy veteran from World War II. He fought in the Pacific, and I came up to him at a little diner just south of the border in Massachusetts. And I said, hey, I'm a veteran and I'm running for Congress. And he looked at me, and it was immediately apparent that he was not very impressed. I think he'd seen a lot of people running for politics before. But he had one piece of advice. He said, Seth, if you win this race, go to Washington as an American. Not as a Democrat or as a Republican, but as an American first. And that's the kind of representative I've tried to be every single day, and that's the kind of president I will be if I'm fortunate enough to get elected.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolyn. Next question is from social media. It comes from Scott Godzik. He asks, will you stand up against socialism?
Absolutely. I'm a Democrat. I'm not a socialist. It's kind of amazing to me that we have that question now in our party. But we are a democratic country. We're a democratic republic, to be exact, and we're not a socialist country. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have some things that socialist countries have, like, for example, everybody should have health care. Everybody should have access to health care, period. That's something that a lot of countries have. We can have it here, but we don't have to become a socialist country to get it. And so I'm very proud to be a Democrat. I'm proud to believe in the free market. We got to make sure it's regulated and everybody pays their fair share. But I believe in the capitalist system. It's made us strong for over 2 centuries, and it will continue making us strong in the future.
Have the Democrats moved too far to the left, though, do you believe?
Look, if we're going to be the majority party, we've got to have the majority of ideas out there. So I think it's wonderful that people are talking about ideas on this end of the spectrum and ideas on that end of the spectrum. But ultimately, we have to represent the majority of Americans. And we have to stay close to what makes America strong and always has.
Joan Wentworth has the next question.
Good evening, Congressman.
Good evening.
What role, if any, do you believe the federal government should play in establishing regulations regarding vaccinating children against highly communicable and potentially deadly diseases? And to what extent do you believe philosophical and/or religious exemptions should be allowed?
Wow. This is a good question, and I know how controversial it is because I have a 6-month-old daughter, and so someone has asked me, are you getting her vaccinated? And the answer is absolutely. I believe in science, and vaccines work, and that's clearly what the science says. So I think it's dangerous to have a lot of kids out there who are not getting their vaccines when there's really no science to support it. Now, religious exemptions are always tough. Because we honor religious freedom and we honor the separation of church and state. But the problem is that when religious exemptions put kids at risk, whether it's because they're not getting the vaccines they need to stay disease-free, or whether it's because they're not getting those vaccines, they put other kids at risk in their kindergarten or whatever else, then that's a real problem. So that gets to the heart of the question, which is that we have religious exemptions for a lot of things. But if vaccines become a public safety concern, which I think they are, then that's a place where we'd have to have very, very narrow religious exceptions, if any. I think kids should get vaccinated because it's a safe thing to do, not only for kids, but for their communities. Now, I'll tell you, Emmy, my daughter, got her 6-month vaccines last week, and I hated it. It is so painful to watch your poor daughter get stuck with these. My wife leaves the room. We always take her to the doctor together. She's like, I'm not doing this. And so I'm like stand to the back of the room so she doesn't see me connected with, it's the doctor who's giving these things, not Seth, right? Not Dad. And then I rush in and pick her up and hold her and, give her a bottle right away. It's literally painful to watch. But it's making her healthier and safer. And that's why we have rules around public health in America. And I think this is a public health concern.
Thank you very much.
But thanks. That was a good opportunity to sort of talk it out and think it through.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, next question comes from Robert Plord.
Hi.
How are you,
First of all, I'd
Robert?
like to thank you for your service on behalf of our country.
Thank you.
There's too few candidates, I believe, that have that qualification for serving our country. So thank you very much for that. My question is, since there's already a term limit of 2 terms for the office of president, would you support term limits for a member of Congress? And if so, what would those limits you propose? And if not, why?
You know, term limits for members of Congress is a very controversial idea, but at the end of the day, I think it would probably make Congress better. Because if you went to Congress knowing that you had a certain period of time to get things done and to do the right thing for the country, and that was going to be your legacy, not just how many times you could get reelected, then maybe you would make better decisions. You know, there's this sort of perception we have about presidents, which is that they always do their best work in their second term, because they're not worried about getting reelected, they're just trying to do the right thing for the country. Well, maybe if we had term limits on Congress, that would help as well. Now, I know that I'm going to make a lot of members of Congress, my colleagues, upset by saying this. But the fact of the matter is that Congress isn't working right now. I mean, how many of you think that Congress is just knocking it out of the park? Like just totally killing it, right? No, right? No, it's not. When I got elected, one of the first things I did is I brought in as a chief of staff a startup executive, because I was like, we need to totally rethink this. You know, I got this little handbook about this is the way that you do Congress the way everybody else does Congress. And I'm like, why would I want to do Congress the way everybody else is doing Congress? So we need to change. We need to change the system. Maybe term limits won't be necessary if we make some other reforms, but it's something that absolutely should be on the table, because I think it would make Congress stronger and better. And it would remind members of Congress that they're there to do what's right for the country, not what's right for their reelection.
Thank you.
A specific
Thanks.
limit on terms, though, a number?
Oh, you know, this has been thrown around a lot. People have talked about 3 or 4 terms for members of the House, but actually what I think would really make sense is to lengthen the terms. So right now, members of the House have to get reelected every 2 years. That means that what do you do on election day? You start campaigning. You literally start campaigning, start raising money for your next reelection. I mean, there are people who are in tough districts who their opponent announces before they're even reelected, right? And so I think it would make sense to lengthen the terms from 2 years to 4 years, but then set a limit of just 3 or 4 terms. The reason we had 2-year term limits was because back in the day, when it took a couple weeks to get to Washington from some parts of the country, they said, well, we want to make sure representatives check in with their districts at least once every 2 years. So that's just not an issue anymore. So there are times when we need to sort of evolve with the times, and I think this is one of them. Thanks.
Thank you, Robert. Another social media question coming in, this one from Scott Catogio, who asks, why spend time running for president instead of working for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I would assume?
That's a great question. It's a very fair question. I'm running for president because I believe the best way that I can serve the country right now is by taking on the most divisive president in American history and working to bring the country back together again. There's a lot of good work to do in the Commonwealth. But the existential threat to America right now is the man in the Oval Office. And I'm going to talk about issues on this campaign trail that a lot of other Democrats, that almost really no one else in the race is talking about right now. Issues like national security, issues like national service, issues like what it means to be a patriot. For too long, Democrats have ceded these issues to Republicans, and they're actually where Donald Trump is weakest. I'm going to take on Donald Trump on the job he is doing, not just as president, but as commander-in-chief. The ways that he is putting us in danger around the world, and talk about how I, as president, and we as Democrats, can make our country stronger and safer, both here at home and as a moral authority for the world like we always used to be.
Next question comes from Clara Monier.
Welcome.
How are you? Thank you.
With Social Security running into some fiscal problems by 2035, do you have any ideas on how to solve this crisis?
Yes, absolutely. My colleague John Larson has a bill I've signed on to that will make some changes to Social Security to make it last much longer. One of the things we'll do is raise the cap. Because right now, I think most of you know that after a certain income level, you don't contribute any more to Social Security. So, you know, if you make $500,000 and you make $1 billion a year, you contribute the same amount. That doesn't strike me as really fair. I get the argument behind it, but it's not fair. We actually used to have a cap on Medicare. We raised that cap before. We should raise the cap on Social Security. That'll take care of about 80% of the problem. This bill would also slightly raise the payroll deduction tax to make the program sustainable. I think it goes from like 12 to 14% or something. I don't remember the exact number, but it makes the program sustainable well into the future. Are you getting Social Security now?
Yes, I am.
We've got to make sure you continue to get Social Security. But I think that I should get Social Security too. I think that folks in my generation should have Social Security around for them. And I want my 6-month-old daughter to have Social Security around for her too. So we've got to make some minor changes to the program today. Not big changes, by the way. Raising the cap, that's not going to affect you or me. Adjusting the payroll tax just a little bit, that's okay. We can make these changes today to make sure that Social Security is there for generations to come.
Thank you. That's very thoughtful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. Question for you. You're a veteran. What's your plan for fixing the VA?
So first of all, you should know that I'm not only a veteran, but as a member of Congress, I continue to get my health care at the VA. I made a commitment when I got elected to not get the congressional health care plan, but to continue going to the VA like all the Marines I served with. And I'll tell you, it's been a mixed experience. I believe that veterans should get the best health care in the world, period. And we're not getting it right now at the VA, despite Donald Trump's promises that he was going to fix it. The first time I had to get surgery was actually just a few years ago after I was elected. I got a hernia, and I had to go in for surgery at the VA in Washington. And I went in and checked in, gave them my Social Security number and my name, and they looked at their database, which is supposed to be all coordinated and everything. And after about 20 minutes, they looked at me and they said, well, Mr. Moulton, we can't confirm that you're a veteran, so we'll consider taking you as a humanitarian case. I wanted to say, you know, Google me. I just gotten elected, but I was not going to do that. I'm not going to use. I was not there as a congressman. I was there as a veteran, and so I sat down in the waiting room to wait. And I sat down next to a gentleman. He was a Vietnam veteran who said, "Well, I've been waiting here for 5 hours." 5 hours. Fast forward to the next day when I got my surgery. The surgeon was great. She was from GW. She volunteered at the VA because she wanted to serve veterans, which is a great example of the fact that there are really good people who are working at the VA and trying to make it better. But as I was going under anesthesia, she said, yeah, you know, I don't really trust some of these nurses in here. And I was like, whoa, wait, maybe we should. But I was out. Luckily, I woke up. And when I woke up, the surgeon had done a great job. She said, you're going to get a prescription from the pharmacy and a couple painkillers. You'll probably need to take 2 pills, but you can try just taking 1. I went back to Capitol Hill that afternoon with my bag of pills, and I didn't take any because we had votes and I wanted to remember how I voted. But then at the end of the day, the anesthesia was wearing off and it was getting really sore. So I took a pill, and it didn't, I know you're rushing me.
No.
It didn't make...
We'll be able to continue this conversation online and on our mobile app. We do have to end it in the TV portion. Congressman Moulton, thank you. You can join us online or on our mobile app. You'll hear the rest of this story. Until then, thank you for joining us on Conversation with the Candidate. We appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.